All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Tim and Tim Show every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Gotta love the alliteration on that one. My wife made me do it, and now it's stuck. And hopefully, you guys remember every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, we're coming live to talk about a new show topic. Every single week, we're talking about what's going on in multifamily in the Carolinas, with everything from legal stuff to accounting things and operations and acquisitions and dispositions and everything in between that comes from the day-to-day life of being a multifamily operator, investor, operator, owner, operator. We have a management company, we have the equity company, we do our, we work with the construction crews, we do it all fully vertically integrated. Not a boring day goes by in our world, and we use this output to cue you guys in on what's going on in our lives and what we're seeing in the market, and hopefully you guys don't make the same mistakes we do.
Man, man, I was just sitting. I actually had a moment this morning. I was like, I wouldn't mind a boring day. Um,
You wouldn't mind what?
I was like, I wouldn't mind a boring day. I could use a
Oh,
boring day.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, my mom. Oh, hey, mom, how are you?
yeah, because
My
it,
I was gonna say my mornings, and I saw my mom's name pop
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because it didn't start boring, right? I think I told you like we had an employee reach out about something, and
yeah. It never starts. Well, it's like it's quiet in here. Too quiet.
oh, and then boom.
Boom. Yeah.
It's like
Well,
it's like the universe. Like, did I hear something?
I know. Are you looking for a new problem to solve? I heard you like them. Um, so yeah, this week we're talking about uh the misconception that your property value is all based off the rent roll. Um, Lo and behold, surprise, surprise, this is not the only story in this book. You have to pay attention to your expenses as well. It's funny. We actually got an email from a broker friend of ours recently, and he was talking about how some deals that people had acquired 10 years ago, the NOI is the same as it was 10 years ago. Yet their rent roll had increased like what 46% or something like
uh,
that, but their expenses increased 91%, and it's vastly around expenses you can't control. And I know that we talk about that all the time, but I thought it was really funny because he reached out. I know you're watching this, but maybe he reached out because of the title of the show and said that. But it's something that we talk about all the time. How our underwriting has changed, how our expense lines have changed, how prices per unit and average expenses per unit has changed. And it really has kind of restructured and reshaped how we look at our deals. And we talk about this all the time, but now is the best time to be buying more deals because everything has been price adjusted for these new expense line items, right? Like the NOI, everything has reset. The cap rates have decompressed, the expenses have gone up, the rents have gone up, sometimes have gone down. Now's the best time to buy something to position yourself for the next kind of run up, because you could have bought something in 2016 for 150 a door, which might have been outrageous. But now, your rent rolls up 46%, and you thought maybe you're going to sell it for 250 a door, but you're still back to selling it for 150 a door. And
yeah.
it's interesting, right? Because like we've looked at a lot of deals lately, and the price per door has come down so much, but it's back into like, what's up, Jason? How are you? It's come back into the realm of what we remember prices being in 2019, 2018, 19, 20, things like that, because of all the price adjustments, right? So if you bought it, and you paid 200 plus a door, you're probably having a bad time right now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking about that for a second, and I was like, man, the NOI is still the same 10 years later. That's gotta hurt.
Yeah, I mean, nobody would have expected insurance increases of 2 to 3x over a 2 or 3 year period.
But you think about it a little bit, so guys, we haven't really seen that. Well, quite frankly, we don't have anything in our portfolio that we've owned that long, but other than my house. But the NOI on my house sucks. So
Robert Kiyosaki would call that a liability.
yeah, yeah. Suck it, Robert. Um, I do like my $500,000 in equity though.
Mhm.
So the but I'm thinking about that a second. And, Tim, we've seen it a few times. Like we even had a conversation. a couple weeks ago about something similar. It's like, my expenses adjust daily, weekly, at worst case monthly, but the rent that I can charge my tenant may not adjust for 10 more months. So like, you'll see everybody like wants to see this, like this just steady climb, right? But it's like, no, there's dips in there. Um,
Yeah, we were talking the situation to kind of give a little bit more context. We were talking about how when we have to increase the rent on some residents, and the residents are always really upset
yeah,
about increasing the rents. And your response to that was, I have been paying the increased insurance and taxes for the last 8 months, and I have been losing money the last 8 months because I haven't increased your rent. So you should say you're welcome. Thank you, and you're welcome for paying these higher expenses for me over the last 10 months. Because you lost money. And like, guys, this is a business. We're here to make money, not lose money.
yeah,
And if expenses go up, rent's got to go up too. Offset it.
losing money. We can be pretty good at that if you want to be. Um,
That's a lot easier than making money's hard. Making money's
yeah.
hard, especially
Yeah.
in a down market. Like, when everything's going down in value, it's really hard to make money in a downward, catch the knife, as they say.
Yeah, yeah. Which is why we're going to talk about cash flow one day. But today, rents and
Hmm.
and where the game's really won, right? Like,
Yeah.
so here, but while we're talking about rents for a second, because here's something somebody threw at me the other day, and I'm curious. I haven't asked you about this, guys. I haven't asked him, so this is new to him. I'm kind of curious your thought here, because we were talking about controllables versus non-controllables, and their comment was, I actually wrote this down. Hang on a second. Their comment was, you don't control the market, you do control your operations. So basically, they were saying, hey, rents are market driven, and you don't control that. Would you 100% believe it's that black and white? Would you agree with that?
It's definitely not that black and white, right? Well, wait a second. On the expenses, though, are you talking about the controllable or uncontrollable expenses?
No, just on the rent side. So
Just on the rent side. Yeah, I mean, the market controls the rent for sure. That's what the laws of supply and demand and fair housing and all that kind of stuff. Like, if you're increasing the rent and people aren't buying it, you got to reduce the rent in order to put it into a window that people do want to buy it, right? So yeah, I think that it's not as black and white as the market controls it,
yeah,
but I do think that there's a lot of weight in that assessment.
yeah. I the way I kind of went back at him was, I would agree to a point, right? I don't think you can do anything to exceed the market, but I think there are things that you can do from an operations standpoint to make yourself more marketable, and
Yes.
therefore not be the discount in the market, right? Because
Hmm.
you don't want to be the guy that, like, the bottom of the barrel comes to, or the guys who can't live anywhere else, that you're their option, right? Like, no, like, hey, if the market gets 1,000, I'm going to try to go get 1,000, right?
Hmm.
And what can I do to position myself to do that, right? And I think that was my point to him, was like, yeah, I don't disagree that the market kind of sets the ceiling, um, but I think you control the floor. Um,
Yeah,
so
that's a very true statement, right?
yeah,
Um, but now on the flip side, I've also like read recently on Twitter about some guys that talk about their business plan of, they build new construction and they don't go after class A new construction. They don't build places that have, on-site dog groomers, right? Like, they
yeah,
don't do that. They build solid B class, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, but you're getting LVP and paint and like all the generic
yeah,
stuff. You're not getting like true hardwoods and all these like ridiculous amenities that don't really add operational value. They add like perceived value. Really, they just add expense at the end of the
right.
day, unless you can figure out how to turn it into a profit center. But like, either way, um,
I
but
I
their
think,
goal is their
yeah.
goal is to just keep the rent below market so that they stay full 100% of the time.
And man, I think that plays 100% into like what we're talking about here. Because I mean, I love their strategy. I think over the next 3, 4, 5 years, I think they're going to be highly successful. I think the
Hmm.
A class folks that are doing these, like you said, the dog grooming station and all this other stuff in their facility, I think they're going to struggle.
Hmm.
Because those nice to haves that when everybody was flush with cash and gas wasn't 4.50 a gallon or whatever the hell my wife paid yesterday. Um, when those things weren't taking place and there was plenty of extra money going around, like people are like, yeah, like I like these amenities. But at the end of the day, I think people go, you know what? I just want a really good, clean place to live. I don't need all that stuff. Right. Um, and I think those guys have a really good business model for the next little while.
Yeah, and to be fair, they said it only really works for them is because they develop their own stuff. So
Yeah.
their cost basis is pretty low, and when they
Yeah.
go to refinance it, they don't take out 100% of the equity. They refinance into like 50 or 60% LTV.
Right.
If they return some equity, great. If they don't, also fine. But their business plan is that they're going to keep it full and fill it up quickly by staying under market rate rents, because that B class market, those are the good tenants that you
Yeah.
want, right? The ones that are more value driven, but they still want something that's acceptable.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was like, wow, it's really great. We got to get into development. We've been talking a lot about development over the last couple of years, but more so the last couple of months. In order to kind of do that.
Yeah. I got my tool belt ready. Let's do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, but
I need a tile guy though. That's not me.
they need a paint guy. It's funny. It's my dad would help us do like renovations around our house, and he was like, "I will help you do everything except for drywall and paint."
Yeah, God. I don't actually mind most of the drywall. I hate the sanding part. I'll do all the other stuff.
And the mudding of it, yeah.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, but so Tim, like I think that's a really good segue, right? Because I think you said something there is like they don't go after the headlines, right? They're focused on winning the game, which is the execution, the operations, the tenants, right? Like you said, like keeping those good, paying, solid tenants in place, not having high turnover. When you don't have high turnover, you control your expenses. Because I don't know anything that's much more expensive than a turn
mhm,
at a single time. Um, yeah,
mhm.
I mean, other than an HVAC goes out, that's kind of expensive. But a turn every time a tenant leaves, I got to pay however many thousands to get a new one in, right?
Well, you lose 1 month's rent, then
Yep.
you spend 800 to $1,000 on our paint. Maybe you have to redo the flooring. That's another three,
Yep.
$4,000. Hopefully you don't have to do that, but you have to go in and do touch ups and whatever. I mean, call it $3,500 to $4,000, plus the lost rent for a month, and then you got to pay your leasing manager a leasing bonus for the new lease and marketing fees and everything else that goes along with that. I mean, it just continues to pile on. And something, we had a conversation with we do a GP call, right? So like deals that we do with other members, we did a GP call yesterday, and we were talking about how today's March, and we're already thinking about our October and November refinances that are coming up, and what are we doing today in order to get the rents to where we need them in order to maximize the value and get the refinance proceeds into the best position as possible. And I explained it. I come from the insurance world, as a reminder, and I explained it kind of like an insurance policy. And I said, property management has a really long tail, meaning something, if you want to have something achieved, it takes a long time to get there. Like the cause and effect is a very long time period, right? So, like if you're going to evict somebody, you got to wait 5 days for them not to pay. Then you got to give them a 10-day notice in North Carolina. Then you got to go to the courthouse and file eviction. Then you have to wait for them to schedule a hearing with you to file the writ and get the writ of possession and all that. Then once they do that, they have 14 days to get out once the writ is awarded. Then if they don't get out, then you have to go file to have the sheriff serve them, and then that could take another 24 to 48 hours. I mean, you're talking 6 weeks. It could be 2 months in a worst case scenario
Mhm.
to get somebody out of your property. Not only are you going through the eviction process, they're not going to pay rent for those 2 months. You
So
can't collect the money for those 2 months because that would cancel the eviction. And so now you just lost 2 months of rent. Then you got to renovate the unit. That could take 2 weeks, 10 business days, sometimes a little longer than that. And then you got to have somebody move back in. I mean, you're looking at a potential 90-day period of not collecting rent to increase your rent roll from previous to market rate, right?
yeah.
And in a value add deal like this, it makes sense because there's like $600 rent increases, and we need that net rental income in order to achieve our pro forma and hit our refinance targets, right? But
Yep.
what I was trying to illustrate is that it would take you so many months of lost rent by trying to achieve the top of the market by going through an eviction and getting somebody out. Unless you can just non-renew them, right? And then it's kind of a little bit of a different scenario, but it takes so much time and you lose so much money in order to push the rents and achieve pro forma. If your cost basis was lower and you didn't have expiring debt, you would just walk them up over a period of 3-4 years if they were a good resident.
Yeah.
And statistically, a residents are going to leave after 3 years in our world, anyways. So you wouldn't even get to market rate, but you wouldn't have to spend that money over that 3-year period to
Right.
continue to collect that cash flow. So obviously, there's pros and cons to each, but just to illustrate the point of how long it actually takes to achieve your pro forma and then refinance successfully, because not only is it going to take us at least 2 months to get these people out and renovated and released, but then we need 90 days of the rent roll posting of where we want the rents to be so that we can qualify for our refinance. So you
Yeah.
have to work backwards from your refinance target by 6 months to 12 months in order to scratch the surface of being able to potentially achieve your pro forma rent on your underwriting.
Yeah, I mean, as you're talking through that, the whole time I'm just sitting here going, really, like, people. I think people sometimes make like property management and property ownership a little more complicated than it needs to be. They're like, oh, it's a unique beast. I'm like, no, it's a pretty standard beast in the business world, right? Because at the end of the day, for the most part, it doesn't matter what business you're in. There's not much that's more expensive than new acquisition, right?
Yeah.
Like new bit,
Yeah.
you chase new business. You spend a lot chasing new business. Same thing I mean, new business in the property management world are tenants, right? Like you spend chasing new tenants, right? And you
Mhm.
lose while you're chasing them, typically. So there's a lot to be said for tenant retention, right? I mean, the what is it? Somebody said this to me. The cheapest unit to lease is the one you never lose, is the tenant you never lose. And I'm like,
Yep.
I kind of like that. I fumbled it, but I kind of like it.
Remember
Um,
that one property we were looking at where the resident had been there since it was built new, and she
no,
hadn't
yeah,
been a resident since the
yeah,
70s or 80s?
yeah. And her
Still had
her
the shag
unit still
carpet.
look, yeah, her unit still looked like it.
Yeah,
Um,
avocado appliances.
Still had like the wood paneling and everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, man, they really made out on her, that's for sure.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm like, man, we could use this to record a '70s show or something. This is awesome.
Right, right, right. But yeah, I mean, paying attention to your expenses and your operational efficiency is paramount, right? Because you can control, to an extent, you can control a lot of expenses, right? But like as you start to take on vacancy, you have to do marketing. Marketing costs money. You have to do turns. Turns cost money. And now you're always going to have a certain level of turnover. We generally like to budget between 70 and 80% of our residents are going to renew every year, and 20 to 30% of our residents are going to leave. Whether they're moving out of town, got a new job, buying a house, whatever the scenario is, right? But you kind of budget for those things and you try to minimize those turnovers as much as possible and try to work with the resident and say, well, is there anything that I can do to keep you and not have you leave? Right. Because it's a lot cheaper for you to do a, appliance upgrade for $1,000 maybe they need a new stove and a new refrigerator. Well,
Yep.
that $1,200 is still going to be cheaper than losing 1 month's rent and then spending, $3,500 to renovate the entire unit while it's vacant, right? So, it's pros and cons of everything, but you really have to think holistically of all of your decisions and strategically of how is this going to help me achieve my business plan, or is it really going to put me behind the eight ball?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny when you talk about that because we had a property manager one time that was like, "Do you really want to give them new appliances to stay?" And I was like, "Well, if I move them out and I renovate the unit, I'm probably buying new appliances anyway. So,
Hmm. Sure.
you know, why not?"
Yeah.
you know, I don't have any downtime, and oh yeah, I didn't have to paint the unit. I just bought
Yeah.
appliances. Um,
Well, and you know what? Tell me if this is fair or unfair, but from an investor's point of view, I think property managers made out to be the bad guys 99% of the time because there's not enough patience around how long it actually takes to achieve what you're trying to achieve in the apartment space. Do you think that's fair or unfair?
Say that again. So
That property managers are always the kind of the scapegoat of why a deal is not being successful, is that I think that there's a lack of patience from the investor or the ownership side
mm,
with the understanding of how long it actually takes to achieve something.
yeah, I think that's a fair statement, right? I think if that's what
It's
you're
a
asking.
broad statement, but it's fair.
Yeah, I think PMs are typically looked at as the the villain in that scenario, right? And
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and I think too, and I mean, hell, I think we've even been guilty of this earlier on, which is like I think sometimes investors go in with an unrealistic expectation about how long it should actually take, right?
Yeah.
They're like, we should do this in 3 months, and you're like, really, 100 units?
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, that's a little drastic, but if it's
Yeah,
12 and everyone's on month-to-month leases, then yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm being I'm being purposely unrealistic there. Um, but yeah, so hey, so here's something. Speaking of expenses, I think you and I had a conversation about this last week or week before. Tim and I talk a lot, so I lose track of some of the conversations we have. But expense creep, right? We talk about deal creep, we talk about all kinds of creep, but expense creep. You know, $50 here, $75 there, and then the next thing you know, you're like, whoa, right? Like where we were at 38%, we're now at 42. How did that happen? And I always like to use the example of it. It's like when you're on Amazon and you're buying stuff. It's like, yeah, it's only $30. It's only 40
Yeah,
bucks. And then the bill comes and you're like, I spent 4 grand on Amazon this month. Like what?
yeah,
How'd that
right.
happen? I think that happens a lot in property management and in managing and owning apartments, right? Like, that employee comes and they want that raise, and you're like, it's just $2,000. I mean, it's not even 200 bucks a month, right? Like that kind of
Mhm.
thing. Or oh, let's who cares about the extra 50 bucks for the alarm system every month? All right. They don't shop those things. And the next thing you know, it's like, man, we've added $2,500 a month to our expense load on this property, right? Um,
Mhm.
those things add up real fast. I mean, you started the call off with, I've owned it 10 years and my NOI is the same, right?
Mhm.
I expect there's probably some expense creep in that statement. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we've done analysis, every year when we do our budgets, like, kind of running through the general and admin expenses and trying to see like where's where's the money going? Like, in a
yeah,
holistic view of last year, like where did everything go? And the one of the things that I like to do is compare our actual expenses to like industry standards on a price per unit basis. So what are your utilities on a price per unit basis?
yeah,
Like, is your water bill $1,200 per unit per month? I mean, sorry, per unit per year. When industry standard, it used to be like 500, but now it's like closer to $600 or $700 per unit per year. So, like, why is yours almost double? Do you have
yeah,
water leaks? Have people, the toilets running constantly? I mean, utility usage rates, like we try to pay attention to those. Recently, I did it on another property that we own, and our repairs and maintenance was like more than double what the industry standard was. It's like, wait a second, like why is our R&M so high? And we addressed that with the property management company. This one's a third party manager that we use, but it was like you have to take a step back get out of the weeds of everything and take a
yeah,
look at everything from a holistic view to have an understanding of, are you operating it well or not? Right? Do you need to make a change, a structural change, a strategical change? Um, you know, there's not a good answer. It's just it is what it is. But more often than not, you find that there is a solution to your problem if you pay enough attention to it and you dig down into it, right? Because what
yeah,
you're talking about, like with the expense creep, is I know exactly the vendor you're talking about, and they just keep nickel and diming us for $10 here, $30
so,
there, $15 here. And it's like, okay, guys, like, at some point, we're just going to say, we're done with you as a vendor and we're going to bring on a maintenance person because it's costing us more money than if we had just paid the payroll on a monthly basis or, a
right,
bi-weekly basis.
right,
Um,
right.
but those are the types of things that you need to go through in order to have an understanding of how to make that structural change, right? How else would you know if it would be more cost beneficial to transfer from a vendor to a maintenance guy? Besides, hey, like we bought more units in the area, like we know we have enough units to kind of spread the payroll across to keep it reasonable. But if you don't do some kind of analysis on your expenses on an annual basis, you really are just kind of flying blind
Right. Right.
because you
No,
don't notice it on a day-to-day basis. Like it is just stuff that continually compounds and adds on, and it's 10,000 paper cuts.
yeah, I completely agree. And man, I think going looking back at COVID, there was this push, right? You saw this a lot of like, hey, doesn't matter where you buy, right? You just get a third party property manager and you're good.
Hmm.
You can be in California, own in South Carolina, and you're all good, right? But I think what people are starting to see though is like maybe that works. I don't think you're going to be horribly efficient with that. But I think you've seen a lot of failures because of one very basic thing, which is like the inability to easily walk units, right? To
Hmm.
and I don't know how best to keep expenses under control without adding in that actual unit walk or property walk to the mix as well, right? I mean, how many times have you shown up on a property and you've seen something and you're like, why are we doing this? Right. It happens almost every time I drive by one. Like,
Hmm.
why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Why are we, you why why do we have that long guy out here doing this when, to your point, you call this one out a lot. Like, why do we have a maintenance guy if the long guy's doing that? Right. Um,
Right.
you know,
Why are we paying somebody to pick up the trash when in our bill and our contract with the landscaper, it says that they pick up our trash?
yeah, yeah, man. I think that's a great one, especially when you start looking at staff and you're like, what are you guys doing? Like, there's 40 hours in the work week. What did you guys do this week? you know,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
so
Fun times.
uh, yeah,
Problems
good
with the
times.
day-to-day property manager.
Hey, here's so I know we got to go in here in a second, but here's something like just throw in one at you, and I'm putting you on the spot. What do you think? Over the years, what is something that you've come to realize as an experienced operator is a big thing to track that you probably didn't think of 4 years ago?
A big thing to track that
I'm
we
not.
probably
Yeah,
didn't think of back then.
yeah.
Hmm. Nothing's really jumping out or like nothing's smacking me in the face right now. Is there something that
Yeah.
you think of?
Yeah, because we've been talking about it a lot lately. Renewal rate.
Oh, I was thinking about a retention rate.
Yeah,
Um,
same thing, right?
yeah, I mean, because like the general assumption is 70 to 80% retention rate. But yeah, if you don't know what it actually is, how can you budget effectively to make sure that your expenses are going to be in line?
Yeah,
Do
because
you actually have like a 50% retention ratio?
yeah, because when we started this, right? Like it was all value add, and it was like get the rents up to here as fast as
As
possible, right?
fast as possible. Yeah.
But what a lot of folks, and us included, 4 or 5 years ago, what we didn't really think about is once you've got them there, once you're
Hmm.
stabilized, you need to run it like a stabilized property, and retention rate becomes very important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah. That's a fair statement. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are different. Like even the way that we originally structured a management company, we were very much in value add mode. And what we found was what worked then doesn't work now as we're transitioning into a lot more stabilized products, right?
yeah,
So you're starting to pay attention to different key metrics and KPIs, retention rate being one of them. Obviously collections and, are your evictions being filed on time and delinquency and, all of these other things. Like, yes, it's always important all the time, but it has a different level of importance when you're operating on a stabilized basis because you
yeah,
don't have this capex fund that you can draw upon in order to renovate units for, right? Like you have to make
yeah,
sure that your operating income covers your turn expenses because that's where the money comes from.
yeah. And then having your staff recognize when you've moved
Yeah.
from high high value add mode to stabilize mode.
Right. Like, yeah, I'm not trying to increase the rent, $100 every single year. Like, just keep it full. Like, it's better to keep it full than to continue to push the rents.
Yeah, because
Sometimes, depending.
because sometimes, man, they'll keep spending like you got that capex fund, right?
Right. That's true. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining this week. Appreciate you joining, and we will be back next week with another fun episode.
All right, guys. See you later.